You're listening to Isaac 98.1 FM. We have a special edition of the Sports Rush here brought to you by Johnny Q. We have a special guest with us, former West Indies premier fast bowler, cricket commentator Ian Raphael Bishop. Bish, welcome to Isaac 98.1 FM. Hope all is well with you.
Thank you very much for having me, Kern. All is well my side, and I hope all is well with us.
Yeah, all is pretty well. We're a bit patchy, but we're going through. This is the 12th edition of the CPL. We started in 2013. We've seen the best of the CPL. Um, you've been doing this for 12 years. Does it get old for you? Does the novelty wear off?
I love doing it. I love working in sports. I love watching cricket, and then getting paid to speak about it is an absolute blessing and a joy. So I'm thankful every day that I get to continue.
How do you keep the energy up? I mean, you've crisscrossed the world. You do it all year. But when I listen to you, in the CPL, there seems to be a special energy. Let's talk a bit about that.
And CPL in particular, its branding is slightly different from Test cricket. It's different from some parts of 50 over cricket. And so there's a separation from the point of view of the excitement it creates West Indian landscape. Not all T20 cricket, of course, is like that. If you're doing an ICC tournament, then there are going to be high moments and low moments. If you're doing IPL, that's another fast-paced, energetic, and vibrant form of the game that is marketed as such. So a lot of the energy that you will see around, from my perspective anyway, and cricket in general, is because I love the game. I enjoy watching new talent and seeing new talent and some of the old talents blossom.
Let's talk about CPL this year. Compare season 2024 to the ones before. Is the brand, the product, is it getting better?
From the West Indian fan base has shown no diminishing. You look at, let's start at home when TKR play. Um, the uniformity of the fans that come out to watch with the color of the clothing. You look at Guyana and how exciting Providence Stadium dresses up itself, and the fans' experience there is second to none. And you could say that amongst most of the bigger populations. Of course, when you start going to St. Kitts, the population sizes are smaller. The franchises are perhaps not as successful, although they've won one tournament in 2021. So I think from that perspective, and then the players' perspective as well, players gravitate towards it. So it's a matter of keeping that tempo and keeping, I suppose, the experience of a CPL, which separates it from some of the other franchise tournaments.
What has impressed you most about CPL 2024?
From a personal perspective, I look at it with through two prisms. One, the tournament itself and the prospective winners, and you've got Ghana Amazon Warriors, who I think you have to go through them to win the tournament. They've got great depth. They're looking to defend their championship. The Barbados Royals are better than last year. So I'm looking also West Indian players, prospective West Indian players, and I've identified one or two young players like Shamar Springer, who's not an unknown. He's won an under 19 World Cup. He's been around the domestic scene for a few years. I'm looking at the resurgence of Shimron Hetmeyer. I'm looking at Nicholas Puran's record season in terms of runs tally and a number of other performances. I'm looking at who can win the tournament, but who can also go on to make West Indies a stronger force on the world game.
Talking about the West Indies, I mean, we hosted a T20 World Cup this year, didn't finish in the top four, didn't win. Was that disappointing for you, or was that par for the course?
I think I would fall in line with many other West Indian fans and say I hoped that they would get at least to the final four. That did not happen. And different people have different expectations. So I understand that. But I think when you look around the CPL tournament, right, and you see some of the more mature talents, when you see Romario Shepherd, when you see Shea Hope, when you see Kimo Paul, when you see Nicholas Puran, and those guys, When you see young guys coming through, some of the younger guys, a Joel Andrew, for example, and the amount of talent that we have, particularly from a batting perspective and a spin bowling perspective, my expectations on the world stage are a little bit higher. So I see no reason why the West, with the talent that we have in Caribbean, why West Indies T20 squads can be competing in that final four of ICC tournaments. I know it takes more than just talent, it takes cohesion and all of that, but from a talent perspective, we have that.
What do you think happened this year? I mean, we started off a bit patchy in Guyana against Papua New Guinea. We gradually improved. You saw lines of weaknesses in the team from time to time. But where do you think we went wrong this year? Was it preparation? What was it?
There are two things. We need a wrist spinner because I think wrist spin, whether it's left arm wrist spin or right arm wrist spin, or a mystery bowler of some kind, um, would help and aid the West Indies team significantly. From a batting perspective, we still have work to do, and I say we, as West India, as a West Indian team, have work to do on not boundary hitting. Boundary hitting is second nature to West Indian batters, but being able to score off more deliveries, whether you want to term that rotation of strike. And I think that's an area that once there's a challenge in the pitch, the batters tend to struggle to hit boundaries. And this is not a recent phenomenon. This goes back a while.
How do we, going forward, we have a T20 World Cup next 2 years in India. Um, if you were in charge of West Indies cricket or in some sphere of influence, how would you prepare that team for the next 15 months or so?
You have to play high volume, right? You have to identify, and I'm sure the West Indies coach and captain would have sit down already. And they would have identified what are the number of games available to the West Indies team between now and let's say a month before the start of the next World Cup. Because within that next month of the World Cup, within the month leading up to the World Cup, whether it's a couple of weeks or a month, you want to be able to get guys together for some period of time, have a bonding session, go through a few plans, etc., etc. But the identification, as I said, of a wrist spinner, a mystery spinner, giving that person or those persons enough game time at international level. I don't want to identify a number of games right now. Fine tune your death bowling. And
Mhm.
I know it sounds a crude term, but your end of innings bowling. And that's why I identified a kid like Shamar Springer, who bowled good Yorkers, Shamar Joseph, who has the potential to be a good Yorker bowler. And that is just, in a nutshell, how you would go about doing that. The challenge though, is the franchise leagues drawing on a lot of your players in that 2 year period. So you don't necessarily, and every team faces this, you don't necessarily get to play your best team in bilateral tournaments for long periods.
Correct. Drifting across the Test cricket. Um, we've had a kind of topsy-turvy year. We started off brilliantly this year in Australia, losing the first test, but coming back fantastically in the second test to win at Brisbane. You were there for that. Take me back to Shamar Joseph's great achievement and the atmosphere around that victory.
Yeah, Shema is a wonderful story. I remember messaging him late in the evening, asking how he was doing. And obviously he was God. He said he was kind of okay. Then the next morning, we heard that he wasn't coming to the ground, or that he might not be coming to the ground because he was in that much pain. But I think West Indies had a last minute discussion and they knew how desperate the situation was. And the doctor called him, as the story goes, gave him an injection, painkiller of some kind, and it worked miracles. I would like to have a painkiller like that next time I have had some sort of injury.
For sure.
And just to watch the young man say yes, coming, whatever it takes, and running in with that injured leg and executing a number of high quality deliveries there for such a protracted spell. I can't remember if it's 10 or 11 overs of the trot or something like that, but it really was one for the ages. So at that pace with that control and the end result of that win, I saw tears coming out of the eye of Brian Lara and Carl Cooper. I saw two men, Kern, who I've always looked at as two of the coolest dudes to ever traverse the cricketing landscape and the landscape itself, moved with such emotion, told me everything I needed to know.
Hmm. After that, though, we went to England and we lost that series badly. We were whitewashed, and then South Africa. Why is it that we seem to have these highs and lows in our cricket, these crests and these troughs? I mean, you've been around this for many years, and we've seen the West Indies decline from people say 1995, but I'd like to think around maybe 1988. We began to see that slow decline. Why is it we're still in this hole, for want of a better word? What is the struggle? Why do we struggle to come out of this?
So the decline goes back further just from a historical perspective. People see the end result, right? And people see losing to Australia as the beginning of the decline. But that decline, I remember in hindsight looking back, and from when I came into the team in 1988, and just before that, seeing a little bit of what you'd call lessening of
Correct.
certain intensities. And a decline doesn't happen in one day or it doesn't happen overnight. And people need to understand that did not start in 1955. That started before that with years and the improvement of the other teams around the globe, right? So, in a nutshell, when we go to India, when we go to Australia, when we go to England, and we see the resources that those countries have in pumping into their cricket structure, including facilities like grounds, including how they organize their teams and competitions, swimming pools, gyms, every ground, wonderful surfaces to practice on. Some grounds now have hotel facilities, the grounds, and that's just an insight into the landscape. So you can see with the amount of the disparity of the economics, to put it that way. India has so much uh, wealth. Australia is so much more advanced in terms of their wealth. England, the same. And they're putting it to decent use. West Indies struggle to compete on that front. We are challenged also because many players now, understandably, I want to get that out, understandably are drawn towards the economics of franchise leagues where you can get more money in a shorter period of time to look after your family in the long term that West Indies cricket cannot afford to pay at this point as we speak. If there's a way of rectifying that, because your test players, there are a number of guys playing franchise cricket who probably could make one or two decent test players as well,
Of course.
but they are being drawn. They are being drawn away by the understandable economics of those leagues. So you never quite have your test playing team and players that you want for those coaches playing together. And that is a that in a nutshell is part of this.
But is there any way to fix it though? I mean, surely it's not a one day thing to fix it. We know that. But how do we actually fix this to bring the team back to a level of competitiveness?
That's a more equitable solution that needs to come from the ICC, where Michael Holding, great mentor of mine many years ago, hearing it regurgitated, he talked about the ICC for countries that are smaller in nature, the Sri Lankas, the West Indies, the New Zealands, um, and disseminating assistance to them, right, which would help them with facilities, etc. You look at the team that went to Australia, for example, and how inexperienced that team was in terms of test match cricket. Um, you look at the team that went to England, was challenged because of the hurricane. Some guys didn't turn up. They were
Mhm.
playing white ball cricket for so long. West Indies don't play as many test matches a year as England, India, Australia do. They probably play just about half the amount or just a little bit over that. So you feel as though you're starting over
Every time
almost
you
each
play.
series.
Yes, correct.
Those are huge disadvantages. The players have to be more committed. Let's not, if I was a player, I'd say it starts with me. I've always said it starts with me. Uh, but there are definitely different difficulties and disadvantages that it needs a helping hand. The Sri Lankas, the New Zealands, the Pakistans to a lesser extent, and West Indies from global community. Johnny Grave has spoken ad infinitum about it because we are disadvantaged in our location.
Yes, we are. Um, there are certain players I would love to see play Test cricket again, but I'm wondering if that ship has sailed. For example, Shea Hope. Do you think Shea still wants to play Test cricket?
She is the one that has to, so that I don't want to tell tales out of school. I know he was asked to go on a couple of tours recently. That's what I heard. Shea would have to confirm that, and he said for whatever reasons, whether he hadn't been playing enough red ball cricket at the time. I know a couple more players who had been asked to go on tours, and they said no, they've already got commitments with regards to franchise. So therefore, you see the point that I'm making.
Mm.
With the limited talent pool that we have and the limited resources that we have, it is a real challenge getting what we would consider our best players. Nicholas Puran could come into, if he were available, could come into a West Indies test team and bat at 6 or something like that. He made himself, if you back him. And I think he would handle himself no worse than some who have played before.
Right.
Uh, but that is going to have the challenge is to be able to say part of the challenge, part of the solution, I think, is to go to one or two, and I'm not calling any names, go to one or two of the players who we still think capable of playing good test cricket and say, can you commit to me to a couple of test tours down the road? I'm not stopping you from playing your franchise cricket. I don't know that you'll be able to come to a lot of our preparatory camps, play a lot of red ball domestic cricket. If you can commit to me over the next year and a half to one or two or three of these tours, I'm prepared to look at you seriously. And that's the agility that I think we have to have now in the landscape.
Yeah, we have to be a bit dynamic, much more dynamic. Talking about Nicholas Puran, cricket superstar, fantastic T20 player, but I think he can do so much more. And I say on my program all the time, and we can disagree or agree on this. In fact, I don't mind if we disagree, that if Puran plays some 4-day cricket, not even test cricket, some 4-day cricket, some 3-day cricket, if he gives himself to play some cricket West Indies 4-day tournament, at least 3 or 4 games, I think it would help its defensive part of his game. And ultimately his T20 skills would improve and he'll be a better player. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, I think we're preaching and singing from the same hymn book there. That is something that I advocated years ago, and West Indian public know that I've said that from years back. I think that ship might have sailed, uh, but where Nicholas is now, I felt that Nicholas could have, and I'm happy that he's where he is at now. He's one of the best T20 batters in the world. Some people say the best, arguably. I'd say he's one of the best. I thought he could have gotten there a little bit sooner, a couple
Mhm.
of seasons ago, but for the fact that he needed to understand the ebb and flows, even between T20 innings, he needed to work technically and still has one or two areas that he can improve technically, defensively, even in a T20 game, and how to ride the ebb and flow and pace his innings better, which you will find if you play some red ball first class cricket.
Correct.
So if he were to do that, I don't think he would lose any of his skills. I think it would only be beneficial. But I think we're approaching the time now where we're going to have less and less players playing that foundational part of the game in order to develop their T20 skills.
As we wrap up, I must ask this. Going back to your career, you started in 1888 and you finished off with the West Indies, 1998 against England. You did a A-team tour after that. Tell me about your transition from playing cricket to now commentating. I remember following your career, especially your cricket career, playing career. And my uncle and I, we'd follow the West Indies, of course. And he'll ask me, "What's your score?" And I'll say, "Well, 190 for three." How much Bishop take? That was always the line for both of us. What's your score? How much Bishop get? Um, Talk about your transition from playing into commentary.
I would say that had to be God's will for whatever He's taken me into now, because it was never my intention when I finished playing cricket. In fact, I promised myself, which I broke, that once I finished playing cricket, this was while I was still playing. He said, once I'm finished, I want to get as far away from cricket as possible, because I felt at the time that dealing with sportsmen, if I had to work in that environment, dealing with sportsmen like myself would be too much of a challenge with the personalities. And um, I remember when I was injured, I got a prophecy. I went to a meeting, church meeting in the East, and their prophecy came through that you'd be speaking to thousands, hundreds of thousands in the years to come. And I was still playing then. I paid no attention because speaking to people is not my strong point. My wife always reminds me of how bad a communicator I am. She's absolutely right. I can speak to a camera or microphone. My personal communications need work.
Yeah,
So once I retired, I was doing some work at one corporate entities in Trinidad. I was looking at people actually, and a friend of mine, Kelvin Williams, had another friend who was an agent, and he came to Trinidad and said, "Company in England is looking television. He's looking for a commentator from West Indies for the West Indies tour. I think it was 2000. If you'd be interested." And I paid no attention to it. I just said, "Ah, if it happens, if they want one, then fine." He said, "Just do a demo." So I did a demo. I gave it to him, and I just went about doing my work. And then I got a call saying that they wanted me in 2000 to come up to West Indies tour. And little did I know that at the time that Michael Holding, they had asked Michael Holding for a reference, and Holding said, "Yeah, Ian Bishop, blah blah blah." And that's kind of how the television thing started inadvertently, first of all, and God has just opened doors to do what I do now. And like Cricket Kern, uh, every day is a blessing, and every day is a new day, and every day I want to be better than yesterday,
good.
much the same as when I was a player. I don't see the purpose in sitting on laurels because I enjoy the game, the job, and life so much.
Yeah. That's a fantastic way to end, Bish. I know you're pretty busy. Thank you so much for taking time off your schedule to chat with me. I wish you all God's blessing as you go forward. Stay strong and keep fighting that good fight of faith. All right.
Same to you, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Bish. Best wishes. Take care.